visit in the past 5 days. Where is the mayor? She's in Palestine. I'm not going to say the other word because we know that is started 75 years ago. They say this is their independence, Israeli independence. We know that's a lie. We know that what London Breed is doing right now is sanctioning, supporting 75 years, continuing today of our people's murder. Sanctioning murder and violence. London Breed has created and has killed people right here in the city. Banko Brown 2 weeks ago was killed by a Walgreens security guard because of London Breed's policy of tough on crime. What does that mean? That's not safety for any of our communities. That's not safety for Banko Brown, who was killed 2 weeks ago. And it's not lost on us that these are happening at the same time. That London Breed is going to visit apartheid, Zionism, the Zionist entity. I'm sorry, y'all, I am not going to say Israel up on this mic. She's going to go visit the Zionist entity at the same time that Banko Brown was just killed. It's not a coincidence. These things are connected. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. I'm honored to introduce a Bay Area community member and aunt of Banko Brown. Make some noise, y'all.
Hi, y'all. My name is Juju. I'm going to keep it so short and simple. It's been a challenge. It really has, y'all. And it is so wonderful seeing y'all out here, being a community. But at the end of the day, let me just tell y'all something. We can see our people, but we do not hear our people in office at all. People need to start speaking up. People of color need to start speaking up. We brought them in these office.
That's right.
This is what we need, is to feel love and unity. I'm tired of doing this, right? My nephew was taken away for a sandwich. Y'all. And it's no justice at all. But this shows you who we have in office. We need to keep fighting this fight. We stand with y'all, and I know y'all stand with us, so it's all love, y'all.
Hi, I'm Ellie. This is my chosen son. His name's Banko Brown. We didn't get no justice. We didn't get no film. We didn't get no court date for this person. They let him out of jail. They freed him. Totally a sad time for me right now. But I'm supporting, and I'm like here for everything. And I just came off of work for this. Yeah, I'm here, and I just want justice. We need justice for everything, for everybody.
Justice for Banko Brown. No justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace.
No racist police.
No racist police.
No justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace.
I'm Wasim Haj. I'm with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center.
So, what's going on here today?
Today we have a mass rally and protest commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Nakba. Nakba in Arabic means catastrophe. It represents the beginning of the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people. We commemorate these 75 years because on May 1948, over 700,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed, murdered, displaced from their homelands, and this began the beginning of the modern colonial state of Israel.
And in Israel, Palestine today, they're bombing people. I mean, the jets supplied by the United States are doing that. What does it feel like to be 75 years after that with the attack on Palestinians?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, just this week, over 40 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. The Nakba is something that it burns as a fire for Palestinians and for Arabs and for all people around the Arab world as a deep historical crime, extreme injustice that people have not forgotten. And as we say, the Nakba is something that is ongoing. It's never ended. And Nakba is continuing, and the Palestinian people will never forget the Nakba, and they will never stop fighting for their homelands. The way that that it feels is it's 75 years too long, 75 years pressing on the throat of an entire people, and we will fight until we see Palestine liberated from the river to the sea.
And the present Israeli government has ministers who are for apartheid. They're for removal of Palestinians. Why do you think the United States continues to support them?
Well, I do want to be clear that it's not just the current Israeli government, although this government is particularly
openly
racist and fascist, but every Israeli government has been pro-apartheid, pro-ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The U.S. continues to support Israeli terrorism through your tax dollars, every day, because because of Islamophobic forces within the United States government, anti-Arab racism, war on terror, and Trump-era sentiments of racism, and because Israel serves as a bulwark for racism, for violence, and for the expropriation of Arab wealth and Arab land. That's the reason that this whole project is allowed to continue, and why we fund it.
And the Democrats and Republicans seem to be pretty united on continuing funding of the Israeli government and giving them arms, billions of dollars of arms. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty unconscionable and very telling that both political parties and their politicians are well aligned on this issue. But I will say that there's been a tremendous shift in public opinion over the last decade. I mean, at this point, it is understood that over 60% of Democrats actually believe, there was a recent poll that was put out, a Gallup poll, where 60% of Democrats actually believe that the state of Israel is in the wrong. And the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by the state of Israel should not be funded by the United States. So I think it's just another classic example of politicians not listening to their constituents, not hearing their constituents, such as our mayor here in San Francisco, London Breed, who in the middle of a genocidal bombing run of Gaza has elected to take a trip to Israel. Despite the massive public outcry of this decision and massive public support of Palestine among her constituents here in San Francisco.
And the ILW has supported in the past, the members have supported the boycott of Zims. Do you see that taking place, any more of those kind of actions in solidarity with the Palestinian people?
Yeah, I mean, so there are radical and powerful actions for liberated Palestine happening worldwide. In the UK, there's a concerted effort to shut down weapons factories with contracts with the state of Israel. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, in two separate occasions in 2021 and in 2014, we prevented an Israeli ship from docking, an Israeli shipping company from docking at all in the port of Oakland. Similar things have been happening in Italy and in South Africa and all around the world. Working people are rising up in solidarity with the Palestinian people against Israeli apartheid and oppression.
My name's Brooke Lober, and I'm here with Jewish Voice for Peace, the Bay Area chapter.
So what's going on here today?
Today there's a rally and a march. This is in commemoration of 75 years since the Nakba, and also a gathering to protest the ongoing Nakba, right? The ongoing dispossession, the ongoing destruction of life for Palestinian people. And I think right now it's especially serious because there's an Israeli assault on Gaza right now, and 40 people have been killed, right, just in the last few days. So this is both a protest of the violence that happened in 1948, but it's also a protest of the ongoing violence that's been happening to Palestinian people since then and up to today.
What do you think about the fact that the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, is going to Israel? The Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, the they are actively supporting Israel and continue to support weapons and billions of dollars to Israel.
Yeah, well, it's very disturbing to see that, but it's also not surprising in a way because, right, the United States pays, right, more money to the state of Israel than any other foreign aid, $3.8 billion annually to support the Israeli military and the aggression against Palestinian people. So that U.S.-Israeli partnership, right, is one of the things that Jewish Voice for Peace has protested with their campaign against the deadly exchange, the training of U.S. police forces by the IDF, right, by the Israeli military. So, as Jewish people in Jewish Voice for Peace, it's really important to us that we state that we don't support Israeli violence happening in the name of our identity. We don't support Israeli violence happening in the name of Jewish people. This is a genocidal campaign ongoingly against Palestinian people, and it should never be considered that this is something that's done in the service of Jewish people. It's not that at all.
And there's a movement for democracy in Israel, large demonstrations. What does that have to do with what's going on with the Palestinians?
Unfortunately, it doesn't have enough to do with what's going on with the Palestinian people, although I have seen there is an anti-occupation bloc within those mass protests. I think it's much smaller than the larger amount, right? Because most of those protests have to do with the new Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir far-right settler movement taking over, right, government. I'm not really clear that those protests are a place where the Palestinian struggle has been represented as prominently as some of us might hope. But what I have seen that has been beautiful to see is Israeli youth burning their conscription letters, burning their draft notices, and it's very brave of them to do that, and I hope that we see more and more of that.
Do you think you can have democracy with a Zionist state? What do you think about the idea of a Zionist state?
I think that the Israeli state is a settler state. I think that it's been violently displacing Palestinian people since the beginning, and really that's why we're here. The Nakba, right, the creation in a very short period of time of 750,000 Palestinian refugees, the destruction of more than 500 villages. I think that the military rule that Palestinian people have been subjected to since 1948 is itself anti-democratic.
And why are U.S. politicians supporting this kind of state and supporting the Israeli occupation and the oppression, racist oppression, really, of Palestinians and others who are not Jewish?
I think that's complex. Why does the U.S. support Israeli violence against Palestinian people? I think that it's been a U.S.-Israeli partnership for a very long time. I think that because of the way that post-World War II kind of global power basically has been led by the United States. A lot of people name that as U.S. imperialism, right?
Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, I'm not sure what terms people would choose to use over other terms, but sure. I mean, I think that the Israeli military certainly would not be one of the most powerful militaries in the world if it wasn't for the U.S. military aid, right? So, and we know that that's been a long-standing partnership. I will say that as much as it pains me that Jewish people in this country have largely supported the Israeli state project, many Jewish people have protested against it, and quite prominently. I also would say that there are many other forces besides Jewish people in this country, for example, Christian Zionists, right, who are invested in the state of Israel and its oppression of Palestinian people.
And are you surprised by the relationship of Israel to fascist and Nazi movements?
What relationships do you mean?
Giving arms to the Nazis in Ukraine, supporting right-wing fascist groups around the world? Militarily?
No, I'm not surprised, but if you're suggesting that their rhetoric doesn't match their practice, right? They say they have the world's most moral army, but we see that army committing human rights abuses daily. And for them to support far-right regimes around the world, it doesn't exactly surprise me, because I actually think that the Israeli economy is very much invested in military occupation and military rule, and creating ever more innovative ways to militarize, for example, borders and walls. And
Sounds like the United States, though.
I don't think that those systems of power or those techniques of power are necessarily very different. I think that
Military-industrial complex is big in the United States. Militarization of the border.
it's true. At the same time, I don't think that what's happening to the people of Gaza is identical to anything exactly that we see in the United States. On the other hand, of course, many people who are subjected to military violence, border violence, police rule, police violence within the United States look at the people of Palestine with sympathy, because they recognize, right, the experience of the prison industrial complex, the policing of Palestinian people, the outright racism against Palestinian people, which is just a daily occurrence for Palestinian people, especially those who live within the borders, right, of the kind of 1948, even more, I think, to some extent, than in the West Bank, for example. But the reason why people around the world express solidarity with Palestinian people is in part because they sympathize with the experience of being targeted by those forms of state violence. So while I don't think it's wholly different, I also want to say, yesterday I texted with a young woman who lives in Gaza. She lives in Khan Yunis in Gaza. And to fear for bombs raining down on your home multiple times in your life as a teenager, right? That she's already lived through multiple bombing campaigns on Gaza, and it's happening again, and it happened yesterday, and they're terrified. I don't think that there's an equivalent. I think that we have to just recognize that the situation of Gaza is uniquely horrifying, and it should be stopped. The world should stop it.
And the attack on journalists in Israel, they've targeted journalists. Violation of international law.
That's another thing that I think is being commemorated today, is that a year ago, the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was a really important voice for Palestinian people across the Arab world. As someone from the U.S., I really didn't know her work until she was assassinated. But it's very clear that she was targeted as a journalist, and her family continues to seek recourse.
The people united.